San Francisco just finished their mandatory minicamp, and in a previous video, I covered all the players on the offensive side of the ball that really stood out. So in this video, I want to cover the players on the defensive side of the ball. Starting out with the cornerbacks, Renardo Green looks like he might be one of the biggest steals in this entire draft. While Ricky Pearsall could be almost anyone he lined up against, the one player that broke up a pass and shut him down was Renardo Green. The really cool part about Green's performance so far is he's doing this all while learning a new position. He's coming in from the outside cornerback spot he played in college and transferred over to that nickelback spot. So he's actually going to just continue to improve. And even though Green's done a great job without pads, I expect him to be better with pads on because during his time in college, he was an extremely aggressive tackler, and I think that will serve him well at that nickelback spot. But Green wasn't the only new addition to impress. Isaac Yiadom also went off in this camp and arguably had a better performance. One of the things that really stood out about Yiadom was his ability to cover wide receivers in zone coverage. He had extremely tight coverage, and then once the ball was released, he did an excellent job of closing on it. He even broke up a pass to Juwan Jennings doing this. So far, it looks like Yiadom is continuing that momentum he had last year with the Saints, having 14 passes broken up and 1 interception. And he's been so impressive in this camp, I wouldn't be surprised to see him actually be a starting corner this year. I just don't know how San Francisco keeps this guy off the field. So in a surprising twist, it actually looks like San Francisco's cornerbacks might be a strong suit of this roster. Meanwhile, you have the competition on the back half of the roster, and while I'm not high on Ambry Thomas, I do expect him to make the team alongside Darrell Luter Jr. Staying in the secondary, but moving over to the safeties, Talanoa Hufanga continues to rehab from his ACL tear, and he expects to start week 1. But San Francisco also has interesting depth in the rookie safety Malik Mustafa. He's actually faster than both Jair Brown and Talanoa Hufanga, but he plays in a similar style. He also does a good job communicating despite being a rookie, so going forward I expect big things out of him, especially when you consider the fact that we haven't seen him in his best element like Green. He's much better with pads on. Last year, for instance, he had 80 tackles and was widely considered one of the best tackling safeties across all college football. Overall, when you're looking at San Francisco's safeties, it's not a surprise who's picking them, a Hall of Fame safety John Lynch. He knows exactly what he wants, and even though some of his safeties don't have the measurables, he understands they're going to fit his playstyle. But maybe the most impressive part is how they're doing this with such little investment. Whether you're looking at the signing of Gibson or picking up Hufanga in the draft, they're just not spending that much on these guys. In a similar fashion, San Francisco has been able to pick up some absolute steals at the linebacker spot later in the draft. And last year might have been no exception. They picked up both Jalen Graham and D. Winters, and while both played well this camp, I would say D. Winters really set himself apart. He looks noticeably bigger than his first year and better in coverage. Last year at times, he would really struggle to stay in the hip pocket of the wide receiver, but this year in contrast, he's doing a much better job of opening up, and then once he opens up, he gets his eyes on the quarterback and then jumps the route with. So even though San Francisco has Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles and Devondre Campbell, D. Winters could also push for that job while Dre Greenlaw's out. The development of Winters also bodes well for San Francisco long term. Whatever Johnny Hollins is doing with these guys seems to work, and definitely he deserves a pay raise. Another coach that definitely needs a pay raise is San Francisco's defensive line coach Chris Kasarik. A player that already looks to be improving in his tutelage is Robert Beal Jr. He added the size and strength necessary to be an effective pass rusher this offseason, and so far it also looks like he's improved his pass rush moves. In addition to that, it doesn't look like he's lost his first step that he was known for coming out of Georgia. He's still extremely quick despite adding all of that size. Outside of Bill Jr. though, San Francisco's defensive ends that really impressed were their 2 new additions in Yetur Gross-Matos and Leonard Floyd. Leonard Floyd had a great sack on Brock Purdy where he beat Colton McKivitz with relative ease. And even though Floyd is getting up there in age, last year he had a career year in sacks when being utilized as a pass rush specialist. So if San Francisco utilizes him in a similar way going into this year, he could definitely have a 10+ sack year. Meanwhile, Gross-Matos definitely looks like he could fill that Clelin Ferrell type role last year, serving mainly on 1st and 2nd down. One of his better plays of this entire camp was when he shut down a bootleg from Brock Purdy. It really seems like Gross-Matos is rarely out of position and does an excellent job of setting the edge. Outside of these additions, there was also the rookie San Francisco added in undrafted free agency, Evan Anderson. Coming out of Florida Atlantic University, he did an excellent job of not just stopping the run, but getting to the quarterback, which is pretty impressive considering how massive of a human being he is. He comes in at 6'3", weighing 326 pounds. What really stands out about his game is despite this size, he has an extremely quick first step and he keeps his pads low the entire time. When you watch his college tape, this would often lead to him beating blockers even if he was double teamed. And if he's able to continue that once pads come on, Anderson doesn't just have a great shot of making the roster, but contributing heavily on run downs. Ultimately though, these are just my thoughts on who stood out for San Francisco's mandatory minicamp, and I'd like to hear who you're most excited to see this upcoming year, and it would also mean a ton to me if you liked and subscribed. And as always, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day.